Transgender rights, the latest social issue to become a major political issue. It flared up and became national news, as many of you know, when North Carolina became the first state to force transgender men and women to use the bathroom of their birth gender, not the gender that they identify with. And the federal government is now involved, and it's doing the opposite of North Carolina, directing public schools to allow transgender students to use the bathroom that they identify with. Now, the issue, very political and also deeply personal, and we wanted to share a personal story with you. Jodie Patterson is a mother of 5 from Brooklyn. She had her third child in 2007, a girl she named Penelope. Now, even though Penelope was born a girl, she said she felt like a boy. And this started when she was only 3 years of age. Now, she told her mom that not only does she feel like a boy, but in fact, she is a boy. Patterson blamed herself at first, thought that she did something wrong, couldn't understand why her daughter wanted to be her son. Then she realized she couldn't deny the child's identity, and she started identifying Penelope as a boy. And we're very happy to have Jodie join us right now. And you know, when we look, I think a lot of the people look at this as an issue of a bathroom or a political issue with an R or a D in front of the. What struck me was some of the kids in North Carolina, but elsewhere, who talked about what life has been like for them, specifically in high school, but one can imagine before that. And you realize, you know, this isn't politics, this is people. And I'm curious, what prompted you to share what is the most personal of stories and share it with the world?
You know, it does feel very personal at times, and it also feels very political. And primarily I share because Penelope has asked me to, and given me permission, and feels stronger and happier when I do tell his story. And our family is ready to share as well. Oftentimes in the beginning you're not thinking about sharing, you're really thinking about figuring it out and surviving. Mm-hmm. And I'm not in that zone anymore. I mean, our family is thriving. Penelope is an A student, has tons of friends, is a happy kid. And the story that I want to share is about triumph. We've come through to the other side from something that was daunting, unimaginable, and yep, very confusing. And now we are in a place where I have a lot of insight into gender and things that you would never even consider.
When I read and I saw your story, I'd like to think that I am not only progressive, but as a parent also, I just imagined, is there a moment when even if you know with your brain a person is a person, it's who they are, and you can't change that, that you want to not change their sexuality or change their identity, but save them from a harder life than life already is, and say, are you sure? You know, I was amazed at how quickly you embraced this, but even you had some doubts as to how it came to be. Did you do something wrong? Talk about that, because you obviously have a very advanced kid. One of the first words the child said was, I'm not a baby, so you're not dealing with a typical little kid here. When Penelope had this conversation with you, tell about the conversation and also your initial reactions.
It is something that you can't, I'm going to share the story, but to hear it secondhand is quite different from experiencing it. Yeah. And that those experiences, those personal moments, are what change and make you shift. They shift you. So I never thought about gender, I never questioned it. I thought male and female, 2 options, that's it. Yep. And then that was working for my first and second child. It worked for the way I saw the world. And then I had Penelope, who is named after his grandmother. And from very early on, we could see that Penelope was different. Angry, perfectly physiologically healthy, and but angry and sad and nervous, biting his nails early on. And I say he now, but in my mind at the time, I'm thinking my baby girl, mm-hmm, but really he. Biting his nails and crying a lot, and beyond the temper tantrum. I have 5 children, so I know the nuances of temper tantrums, and this was something different. Penelope had bad dreams over and over again, recurring dreams, nightmares. And was a bully, had become a bully. So I asked Penelope one day, I just had enough. I pulled him aside for a timeout and myself for a timeout and sat down face to face and said, what's wrong? Baby, what's wrong? What's really wrong? And in that moment, which is hard to find, a quiet moment when you're looking your kid in the eye, usually you're telling your kid what to do. I asked. And Penelope said, Mommy, everyone thinks I'm a girl. and I'm not. And I thought we were talking about presentation. I said, oh, it's fine. However you feel is fine. You know, I'm thinking maybe she's thinking tough boy and weak girl, and she wants to be seen as strong. So I said, however you feel is fine. No, Mom, I don't feel like a boy. I am a boy. And so I realized we're talking identity. The only thing I thought immediately was, this is beyond what I thought. And you know, I smile now because I'm very proud of Penelope, but in the moment, he's crying and saying how tomorrow, he doesn't want tomorrow to come. I love you, Mama, but I don't want to be you. And everything is bad. It's horrible. I don't like this, Mama. I don't want this. And in that moment, I thought maybe I had done something to not instill self-pride. Maybe I had forgotten to teach Penelope about who she was and who the women are that came before her. And so I spiraled for a moment into doubt and guilt, because all parents, we see ourselves as the sole leaders of our children. And partially we lead, but a lot of times they're coming with their own thing. This was what Penelope was coming with. And it took me a while to even understand what transgender meant. And I did a lot of that on my own. It's one of those things where you don't feel like the world is with you or even your family is with you. So I was with Penelope for a long time, just the two of us. And that, for a family of 5 children, kind of started to tear us apart. And then I had to come back and welcome in the family to the experience. And Penelope had to share it with everyone so that they could understand that this was not mimicking or reacting. This was truly who he is. And over the years, we learned a lot, we experienced a lot, and then I became an advocate. And that's when you stop being scared.
One of the instinctive things that I would try and put yourself in a parent is, I'm sure there's people watching at home right now that are either dealing with the situation or trying to figure out how to deal with it. The worries, the stats about the kids that
horrible.
Are bullied, eventually suicide, depression rates through the roof here. We hear horror stories of what happens to certain kids. Parents sometimes just pull the kids out altogether and homeschool them to try to give them a safe environment. That had to go through your mind as to what's the life going to be like going forward for my son.
Absolutely. All of a sudden, your child is severed from the trajectory that you see yourself on, that we see that my mother thought of for me and my husband's mother thought of for him, where people fall in love and over again and have families and live fulfilled lives. And all of a sudden, Penelope was isolated from that. I couldn't even imagine what was going to be of Penelope and who was going to love Penelope and who was really going to understand him the way that I was trying to. And I struggled with that for a long time. I didn't see Penelope connected to the life that I knew, and this is what we want as parents. But you know, in hindsight, all children come with ups and downs. All children are nuanced, and the parental process is extremely hard. The connector is that we have to walk with our children on their path.
To somebody at home who says, what's the big deal about a bathroom?
Privacy,
you know?
yeah.
And what about in this case, the boy that might be uncomfortable with a person born at birth, the girl being in the same room? What do you say to that person?
I talk about how Penelope is human, and it is our human right to be who we are from the inside out. And it is a human necessity for life to be accepted that way. When you deny someone and when you make them deny who they are, you're inviting suicide. So let's get comfortable with some things that are uncomfortable. We're not sharing the actual toilet seat. There's privacy, but let's get comfortable with it. And I know it's a big hurdle, but we have to protect lives and we have to have human dignity. Penelope is a boy and will be a man and will only see himself that way. If I deny it and if the world denies it, there will be death upon all of our trans kids and all of our gender nonconforming kids. It's not going to happen in my house. And I hope that the world sees it. It is really that heavy. If I ever ask Penelope to come into the bathroom with me when we're roadside or in a restaurant, it's way heavier than any of my other kids. It's fundamentally a reflection of who he is. And it's hard to understand that, but because the whole world sees him as something he is not, he's constantly fighting for his human right.
I hope you know how much you're helping people who there's no book for this. You know, there's no guide. I mean, I can't imagine how much you have to figure out on the fly about this, but it certainly seems this is the healthiest thing for everybody involved, and it took a lot of courage doing what you're doing, and certainly what Penelope's doing as well.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think that the conversation now around gender seems very of the moment. It's not an isolated situation. These aren't special case kids. We're talking the same thing, human rights and the right to be who you are, and we have to support that movement.
Well, Jodie, I certainly appreciate the time here, and as you said, this is a subject of the moment. You're very kind to spend some time with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. We'll be right back, everyone, so please stay with us.